ישראל ואורייתא קדושה בריחו חד ישראל ואורייתא קדושה בריחו חד תורה אורה תורה אורה הללויה 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 ישראל ואורייתא קדושה בריחו חד ישראל ואורייתא קדושה בריחו חד תורה אורה תורה אורה הללויה תורה אורה תורה אורה הללויה תורה אורה תורה אורה הללויה תורה אורה תורה אורה hallelujah.
Chag Sameach, everyone. It's
Chag
great to
Sameach.
see you. Thank you for the energy we feel from you. I have to say that it just immediately put me in the spirit. That and singing, which always does it for me. I was so not in the Chag Sameach head. In the robing room, I was like, okay, I've got to get that festival spirit on. And I was so not there that I forgot. I walked out here without my tallis on. Maybe you noticed that's why I ran back over there. But then the music started. I looked at you, all of you here, and I know that we're joined by many people who are joining us by live stream. We're going to wave to you and say Chag Sameach to you. I'm really glad you're with us. And to say that the magic of these holidays is when they come, they just bring the spirit with them. And especially the music does it for us. And tonight we are particularly grateful to add to our incredible musical team, Howie Lashaw and his incredible klezmer ensemble. They are part of our Simchat Torah celebration every year. Usually we also get to go downstairs and dance. We don't get to do that this year, but you will enjoy the music in here and then just seeing the spirit of your faces in this space. Thank you for being present and helping make this holiday. So we're going to have a short service this evening together. We're going to test your Torah knowledge. We're going to unfurl this scroll. We're going to hear the beginning and the end, and again remind ourselves of these beautiful cycles of life, and that no matter what the world brings us, we are undeterred in bringing this holiday to life, and we're grateful that you're helping us do it. So, what are we going to start with next? Yes. I would like to invite up Robert Zelaznik and Cynthia Johnson to help us usher in the festival lights. And after we bring in the festival lights, we will also offer a Shehechianu, thanking God for giving us life, for sustaining us in this beautiful life, and enabling us to reach this season. And I apologize for the obstacle course for you, too. Come over.
אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
We're going to continue in our Sidurim, in our prayer books,
we make it so difficult. Whether you're streaming or you're here in person, you want to make sure that it looks the same as our Shabbat prayer books. It's the same color, but make sure that it says weekdays and festivals on it. Otherwise, we won't be on the same page. It's looking good so far for most folks. If you need a little help, let us know. We can get you the right book. And same thing, if you're streaming, make sure you have the right link. But we're going to continue in this prayer book on page 130, and we'll rise for Baruch Hu.
Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed, Le'olam Va'ed. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la.
Please be seated. We're going to continue on page 135 with the English reading just for this holiday on the lower left. Let's read it all together. Source of life, every year you plant within us a new tree of life. May it be your will that this year our Torah blossoms with kindness and not cruelty, wisdom and not foolishness, awareness and not thoughtlessness. May you teach us a Torah, a love that will nourish us in every season.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha. Ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha bebeitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'pumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beineinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
On page 142, we continue singing Michamocha.
Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Michamocha Nora tehilo to sefele, Nora tehilo to sefele. Malechotecha ramu vanecha, mokei hayam nifnei Moshe uMiriam. Ze eli anu ve'amru, ze eli anu ve'amru. Adonai yimlo le'olam ha'ed. Adonai yimlo le'olam ha'ed. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Page 144.
So as we sing of this Sukkot Shalom, we have this visual, this beautiful visual of what a beautiful shelter of peace can look like. May it envelop us as we sing. Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom, Lishalom, Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom.
V'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim u'leshalom, u'leshalom.
Hashkivenu,
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu lishalom, ufros aleinu Sukkot shlomecha.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu,
Hashkivenu,
Adonai
Adonai Eloheinu lishalom, Adonai Eloheinu
On page 204, we continue with Amidah. It serves something like a calendar and a clock for the Jewish people, shifting with the time and the seasons. And it's at this season that we are specifically switching from Morid Hatal to Mashiv Haruach Morid Hagashim. And there'll be other notes for the holiday too, but I'll invite you to rise as we continue together.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agit tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים הוא מתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We continue on now silently, either using the words of the prayer book or the words of our own hearts. The Amidah will continue to have some changes just for this holiday. So if you're going through the Siddur itself, just find a nice time to note them. They are a once-a-year occasion for this holiday.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל
We turn now to prayers for a better tomorrow when all people will be as one, when war will be no more. We turn to the Aleinu. Please rise with me if you're able on page 322.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו
Remain standing.
As always, we include in our service a moment of memory, thinking of those who left this world at this time in years past, or those who've left this world recently. And if there's anyone who is on your heart this evening, I invite you to share that name at this time. Zichronam livracha. May their memories ever be for a blessing. We join together in the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 334. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayeh dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudasha brichu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'meran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Please be seated. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. The Torah quiz. We try to have enough questions in here to kind of reach people at very different levels. You got a ringer in the audience. We've got Dr. Andrew Mandel, our rabbinic intern. Don't answer all the questions, Andrew. Although I think a few of these could stump you too. And mostly we want you to have fun. And if you're in our studio audience at home, you can still yell the answers out. And you can get that self-satisfaction when you get the correct answer. So even if you don't...
check Google, though, if they're at home.
Yeah, that's right. If you're at home, no Googling. And if you're Googling it here, we can see you. Okay, so...
We're going to work on a theme song for next year, too, I think.
That's right. Now, if you enjoy this, if you don't like this Torah quiz, it's all my fault. Yeah. But if you enjoy the Torah quiz, you really have to give credit to Rabbi Mosof, because he really put much of this together, with all of us contributing a little bit. So we're going to start with something a little, just a warm-up here. How many times, did you know that the Torah is so meta that it actually uses the word Torah within the Torah a number of times? So how many times do you think that word Torah appears in the Torah? Unless I'm tricking you already, and it's 0. So does it appear 0 times, 613 times, 36 times, or 56 times? And I'm going to invite you.
There's a guest in the balcony.
There's a guest in the balcony. Excellent.
Noah Herman.
No, what do you think? That is such a good guess, Noah. She was guessing that the word Torah appears 613 times. My guess is you know that that's a special number, 613. There are 613 mitzvot in the Torah, but that's not how many times the word Torah appears. But I love that guess. I'm giving you a prize anyway. All right. Anyone else have a guess? Yes, please. C, that's a good guess too, and of course it has the added benefit of being double high, but that's just to trick you. Not the correct answer either. Yes? What's that? 0. No, not the answer either. So by process of eliminations, we got a smart crowd. It is 56 times in the Torah. That root, Torah is not just the word we think of the scroll, it also means to teach, comes from to teach. So that word comes up many times. Okay, second question. I thought that was an easy warm-up, but it turns out that was a very tricky question. Okay, how many words are in the longest Torah portion in the Torah, which is Parshat Naso? That's also the Torah portion that happens to have the priestly benediction in it. This is the second portion of the book of Numbers. So 8,632, or B, 2,264, C, 176, D, 311. I'll just take one guess. Someone take a guess. Yes? B. Absolutely correct. Very good. Now, we've got a Torah scholar in the back. I will also mention that, not coincidentally, this is also the maximum number of words that we let any of our rabbis have for their high holiday sermons. I'm not kidding. That really is the outward limit of what we allow. Okay. Which of these names, next question, which of these names of real New York establishments is not taken directly from the Torah? We've got the gourmet grocery store, Garden of Eden. We've got the hospital, Mount Sinai. We've got the restaurant, Holy Schnitzel. And we've got the nonprofit organization called Let My People Go. So which one do you think is not actually around for reals? C. I know, Holy Schnitzel doesn't exist, but don't you think it should? Yes. Anything that's deep fried and breaded like that should be holy. Okay. But it is not. Sorry. Now, how many students do you think became B'nai Mitzvah at Central Synagogue in the Hebrew year 5781? This is not technically a question about the Torah, but it is a question about how the Torah is being brought into the world by the number of students. So, do you think it's A, 90, B, 80, C, 70, or D, 50 and a half? You should see that half student. What do you think? B, I heard a couple B's. D, thanks, Laura. I'm going to tell you that none of you are optimistic enough. We had 90 students become B'nai Mitzvah last year, which is particularly remarkable when you think about the fact that virtually none of them got to have a traditional bar mitzvah celebration with a lot of friends. None of them got to have more than 30 people in this sanctuary. Some of them only got to have 20. And still 90 of our students wanted to be called to Torah and celebrate this milestone. So I think that is particularly notable and beautiful. All right. How many Parshiot, Torah portions, are there in the Torah? 36, 48, 52, or 54? Yes. 52 is an excellent guess. Tell me how you came to that idea. You just know it. Well, so 52 is such a good guess because there are, of course, 52 weeks in a year, and we read a Parsha every week. But it's a little bit of a trick question, actually, because have you ever heard sometimes when we say, Acharei Mot Kiddushim, or Hukat Balak, or we basically shove a couple weeks together? The reason why that happens is that we occasionally have to throw a leap month into our calendar. And when we do that, the Torah portions have to get spread out a little bit more, or they get shoved together. So actually, the answer is 54. 54 Parshiot, not the same number as weeks of a year. Imagine that. Okay. I think you guys are all doing really well, even if you're getting almost all the answers wrong. No, no, I mean, many of you are getting them quite right. They're very good. Now, this is, what is the first mitzvah or commandment that is in the Torah? A, be fruitful and multiply, pru or vu. B, honor your God. C, establish a calendar. Or D, call your mother. I know which one I think it should be.
I know which one my mother thinks it should be.
Mo did this just to get win points with his mother. Any thoughts? B, honor your God. Very interesting. Okay, that is not the correct answer. A, be fruitful and multiply. I'm going to tell you something. That is a correct answer. There's actually another. So the two answers that are correct here, honor your God definitely comes later. That is definitely a commandment. Call your mother is also one of the commandments. It comes later. But the two are, be fruitful and multiply, which is actually the first sort of command we see in the Torah. It's in creation. That is a commandment for all people of the world, right? Because it's pre-Jews. Rashi says that the real first commandment is establish a calendar. It comes actually in Exodus. And Rashi says that's our first, quote, mitzvah commanded upon Jews because it's the first mitzvah commanded to Jews. It talks about Rosh Chodesh and setting a calendar. So in some ways, you can't be a people if you don't know how to live in time together. So this was actually another trick question because in some ways, there is a machloket, a disagreement over which one is the first commandment. But they both are commandments, as is honor your God and call your mother. Okay, next question. What was the name of the rabbi who led the Torah Academy in ancient Israel that the Talmud describes as equal in popularity to Rabbi Hillel's Torah Academy? Was it Rabbi Akiba, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Shammai, or Rabbi Rubinstein? Shammai? You are correct. Very good. Right on. You knew it right away. So if you hear a lot, Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Shammai were a pair, or what we called a zug in Hebrew. There were almost always these two paired academies with two teachers, Hillel and Shammai. I might take a little bit of issue with the way the question was worded because they said equal in popularity. And let's be honest, Hillel almost always won the arguments, like 95% of the time. So really, who was more popular? I mean, on college campuses, they don't call it Shammai. They call it Hillel, right? So I think we know which one was actually more popular, but we're going to say that at the time, Rabbi Shammai was equal in importance. Great. Okay. What story is not in the Torah? Balaam, the prophet, and his recitation of Matovu. Ruth, often considered to be the first Jewish convert. Reuven, trying to save his brother Joseph from his other brothers. And Miriam and Aaron gossiping about Moses. What do you think? This is kind of a hard one. Yeah. B. Ruth, you're absolutely right. This takes a high level of understanding because he knows that Ruth, that is a story in our Hebrew Bible, but it is not in the Torah, the first 5 books. It comes in the later parts of our Hebrew Bible. So the other stories came from the actual Torah, and this one comes from prophets, from Nach. Very good. This is another kind of real tricky question. What book of the Torah does Bereshit Rabba contain Midrash about? So Midrash are those stories that we talk about that the rabbis create to fill in the gaps, to explicate a little bit more, to give a little more color. So there's a book called Bereshit Rabba. Which book is it talking about? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, or Numbers? I bet you know this one. You're just a little afraid. Do you know what Bereshit is? Which one is it? Genesis, right. I told you it was a trick question, but it's actually not. It's like, who's buried in Grant's tomb? Right, Grant. Right, who? What does Bereshit Rabba talk about? Bereshit, Genesis. Very good. Okay. This one is also a little bit of a tricky question, but you've already been attuned to the tricks here. What living creature is not mentioned in the Torah? Bonus, if you can actually remember what each of these guys do, these animals. We've got an ox. It doesn't count if you say they were on Noah's Ark, by the way. An ox, B, a whale, C, a donkey, or D, a camel. Does anyone know which one was not in the Torah? B. Is that what you just said? Absolutely, you're right. A whale. Because that story comes with Jonah, and Jonah is also from the prophets, not from the Torah. But if you recall the ox, I actually talked about the ox in my sermon. There's a lot of oxes in the Torah. We talk a lot about that with like property and lost property. Of course, there's the camel that Rebecca waters all the camels. And then, of course, we had, what was the other animal that we had? Oh, the donkey, with the talking donkey in the Parshiot Balak. Great. Next one. Okay. Ooh, this is kind of a tricky question that if you were listening to my sermon, you will actually be able to know the answer to. According to the Talmud, who was Yochanan ben Zakkai's favorite person to study Torah with, his Hevruta? Was it Rabbi Hillel, or B, Rabbi Elazar ben Padat, C, Rabbi Nicole Auerbach, or D, Reish Lakish? D, oh, thank you for listening. Reish Lakish. He did also study with Elazar ben Padat, the two, but that was the guy that always affirmed everything he said and found the right proof text and never, ever argued with him. His favorite Hevruta was, of course, Reish Lakish. Okay. Who dies first in the Torah? We've got Aaron, Miriam, Moses, and Jimmy. What do you think? And you probably know that Aaron, Miriam, and Moses were all siblings, right? So who dies first? B, very good. Miriam dies first. Aaron dies not too far behind. Moses near the end.
And Jimmy?
And Jimmy, Jimmy, I think, went off in a chariot and still comes and visits us every once in a while. I don't know.
I think Jimmy's in Bereshit Rabba.
Bereshit Rabba, right.
You
Okay,
know,
there we go.
Midrash. Or should be, at least.
So next question, let's see. We're nearing the end. I know you're very sad about that. What is the first thing the Israelites complained bitterly about in the desert? Lack of potable water, the taste of the manna, the lack of meat, or the poor Wi-Fi? There were definitely only 1 or 2 bars most of the time they were there. So what do you think they complained about first, bitterly? C? That is a good guess. They did complain about that, but not first. A, yes. So the answer is they actually complained about all of the above, but the first thing they complained about was water. Because you know what? It wasn't enough that there were 10 plagues and they came out of Egypt and crossed the Red Sea. They still complained about everything, except maybe the Wi-Fi. I'm not sure about that one, but anyway, lack of potable water was their first complaint. Next. What is the name of Joseph's Egyptian wife? Leah, Osnat, Noah, or Hillel? Does anyone know? Just take a guess. B, Osnat? You're absolutely right. Now, one thing you'll note about Osnat's name, it wasn't actually, she was Egyptian. And this has become like a Hebrew name. I will just confess to you that when I went to Ulpan for rabbinical school, my Hebrew teacher's name was Osnat. And we were sophomoric enough that we just thought it was so funny just to say her name, Osnat, right? Osnat. We didn't like her that much. And but the fact is that that's a name that sounds a lot better in Hebrew than it doesn't translate well in English. Okay, but it's actually a beautiful name. What food is not served in the Torah? Beef and milk stew, quail, chicken soup, lentil soup. A. Now, A would be a very good guess because guess what? It's not kosher. But here's the real story. Abraham served a beef and milk stew. Go figure.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Well, of course, if you look at the Torah, the laws of kashrut come after Abraham. But if we talk about the way we talk about Torah, there is no early before and after in the Torah, so he should have known. Anyway, the rabbis have a really hard time with the non-kosher stew he makes. But that's not the answer. Chicken soup, yes. The most Jewish food of all doesn't appear in the Torah, but it is very good for you, and you should make it when you call your mother. Okay, so what direction does Moses not give in the Torah? A, that any future king should not have many wives. B, choose life. C, follow the Torah. And D, have a Passover Seder. What is not said by Moses? D, correct. Passover Seders come later. Now, of course, there is a Passover offering that happens in the Torah, but the Seder itself is a later innovation. Does not happen in the Torah. Okay, who loses their cool in the stories of the Torah? How about everyone? But see which one it is. Moses, God, Joshua, Esau. Who loses their cool? What's that? Moses? Moses definitely loses his cool. We've got many examples of that, from hitting the rock and many other things and smashing the tablets. God definitely gets angry also, many times. About to kill us all the time. And in fact, a few times does manage to, from the flood to like swallowing up Korach. So Esau we know as well. Joshua, you know, there's actually a little bit of question about Joshua, I would say. Rabbi Lorge wants to defend Joshua.
We actually changed the answer to this question because Rabbi Lorge's interpretation of the Torah.
When
a different answer.
When Eldad and Medad are in the camp and they're prophesying and they shouldn't be, Joshua gets really angry about it, and Moses says, you know, what are you so angry about? We could use more people like that.
Well, how about that? So just take this as another rabbinic argument. But the answer that Mo put was all of them. But, you know that there can be rabbinic interpretation on this one. And what are the first words of the first ever prayer for healing in the Torah? Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, el na rafana la, hashkivenu Adonai, avinu shebashamayim, or I have to kind of sing the last one. Artik menta shakalat banana. Any guesses? B, correct. B, this 5-word prayer is the first healing prayer for healing that we see in all of the Torah, and it's offered by Moses for his sister Miriam, who was struck with leprosy because she was saying bad things about him and his wife. And then God strikes her with like a scaly skin disease. And even then, Moses says, oh, God, please heal her, please. There are 2 pleases in that. The na is please. So he has this beautiful plea with 5 words. El na rafana la. And this is, you will be sad to know, our very last question, but kind of the heart of it all. According to Rabbi Akiva, what is the central commandment of the entire Torah? A, love your neighbor as yourself. B, observe Shabbat. C, do not put a stumbling block before the blind. And D, love Adonai. A, you all knew this one. Love your neighbor as yourself. As we know, this comes in many different forms in the Torah. Rabbi Hillel has a great saying, which is, what is hateful to you, do not do to others. It is our equivalent of the golden rule. I'd like to say I think we had it first. But anyway, it is really a most important commandment and at the center of all of it. And I just want to congratulate all of you and those of you who are playing at home for doing an excellent job. And hopefully you learned a few things about our beautiful Torah. And we want to show to you some of the ways that our beautiful children see Torah. So we're going to show you just a little short video clip that they made for us about Torah and their love for Torah.
2, 1, 2, 3. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu מצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue.
My favorite part about the Torah is that you get to kiss it.
I really like the Torah because it holds so much history and so much stories, and I really like to learn about our ancestors and what they've done for us.
I like that the Torah is so nice, and that when you open it, you could just like speak to God. I like when they read it in Hebrew and they don't actually touch it like a book.
I like two things mostly about the Torah. One, it feels like it goes on, and there's so much interesting stuff to read. And two, it's kind of like a secret code because it only like happens if you only get to know it if you know Hebrew.
What I like about the Torah is all the stories inside.
I love learning about the Torah because I loved hearing about the stories in Genesis. My favorite story was probably Adam and Eve and the whole apple incident with the tree. I loved hearing about that because we had like a huge discussion about whose fault it was. Was it Adam's for not telling Eve about the tree? Was it God's for creating the tree? Or was it the snakes for telling Eve to eat the apples?
The Torah helps us learn about Hebrew, and the Torah is a special prayer book that you can read anytime you want.
And there's so many different ways the Torah can have an outside. Like how the synagogue we have has one different Torah than the rest.
I like the Torah because I like the cave, and I like that, well, you can never really read it too many times. It's really pretty, and you can basically decorate it any way you want.
My favorite thing about the Torah is whenever I open it, I just imagine like all the people who wrote in it.
Something that I love about the Torah is the stories. They're very interesting. So what I like about the Torah is how it has 5 books in it. What I love about the Torah is like the designs on the cover.
I love the Torah because there's so many ways you can interpret the stories.
Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue.
All right. Well, I know for some of us, this holiday, it was particularly last year, but a little bit this year, is bittersweet. Because in our community, as we know, we unfurl typically the entire scroll in this sanctuary with you holding the Torah, and then we have a chance to kind of see it and celebrate it in a special way. And many of us have been here for that. You saw some pictures of it on the screen. And many of our kids are here to experience that. So we wanted to give us a little taste of that. And also a little taste of our kids. We have Noah here. I think there are a few other kids here, but not as many as we would normally have. So you can get a little taste of how fun it is for us teachers to be with our kids, how beautiful our kids are, how spirited they are. And we all know we were once them, doing the same thing they were doing, thinking about the Torah as a young person. And of course, we continue to do it as we're a little older. So we're going to do this year, first of all, we're so thrilled to have so many people here, because last year we did it virtually. But we're going to do a unrolling of the Torah down the center aisle in a moment with the help of music of our band. And we're going to invite people to find, if you'd like to get a chance to see the Torah up close, to take a chance to, kind of find a space in the aisle to stand next to it if you want. We just don't want too many people to crowd around the same space if possible, so that, we're just trying to be as safe as possible. So we're going to unroll the Torah, and then we're going to tell a few more stories from it, and we hope you enjoy the beautiful music and the beautiful sight. We're going to actually leap the Torah over the lectern as part of this process. So invite our band to play while we do that.
We'll invite you to rise if you don't mind as we open the ark.
All right. Well, you know what? This is still pretty extraordinary to see the Torah unrolled and to have us have a chance to see it with our own eyes. And we know those that are joining us through our live stream are getting extra good close-ups of the Torah this special Simchat Torah evening. So each of us clergy were fortunate at one time to be bar mitzvah, and we thought it would be fun this Simchat Torah to have each of us retell a story connected to our Devar Torah or our becoming bar mitzvah long ago. And we're going to start, we actually have 5 clergy here tonight, and we have each of us became b'nai mitzvah reading from one of the 5 books of the Torah.
Isn't that an amazing thing?
That's right.
That we spread out each with our own book?
It is quite nice.
Are you Genesis?
I'm not. Rabbi Dan Ross is Genesis. So, which happens
to
be
where
I'm all the way over here.
But that's okay, you can tell.
But it's okay, I can talk about my Torah portion from
please
all
do.
the way. It's
From when you
probably somewhere in the slant that you could use as a ski slope and jump off down from the lectern. So my Torah portion was Chayei Sarah, which is the Torah portion. It begins Chayei Sarah, but it's actually, which means the life of Sarah, but it actually is about the death of Sarah. And in that Torah portion, Sarah passes away. And then Abraham purchases the Cave of Machpelah, which you can visit to this day, which is the cave of the patriarchs and matriarchs where all of our ancestors are buried. And then the part of that Torah portion that I focused on for my Devar Torah way back when I was 13 years old was when Abraham, Rabbi Buchdahl actually mentioned this tonight, when Abraham sends a servant off to find a wife for his son Isaac. He finds Rebekah at the well, and she falls off of a camel famously when she sees Isaac on her way back. And I talked about what it was like to imagine my parents making a decision for me of the magnitude of who I was going to marry. Sending somebody off and bringing back some, random person who knows from where. And then at the end of the Torah portion, Abraham passes away, and Isaac and Ishmael have a reconciliation, and they bury Abraham with Sarah in the Cave of Machpelah. So that is my Torah portion, Chai Sarah. Thanksgiving 2000, year 2000.
All right, Yasher Koach, Bar Mitzvah boy Ross. I'm
Exodus.
next. Yeah, I'm next. I read from the words of Exodus. Actually, this past Shabbat was my 41st anniversary of becoming Bar Mitzvah, and it was the intermediary days of Sukkot when I became Bar Mitzvah, and I was a very shy boy when I was young. And was not a public speaker in any way. And this is when I was known as Maurice, which some people still call me Maurice.
Some people call me Maurice.
But no one called me Mo then. And that Torah portion is a wonderful Torah portion where God and Moses reconnect after the smashing of the Ten Commandments. And God shares with Moses the attributes that Rabbi Lord spoke so beautifully about this past high holidays, and the attributes that God aspires to have. And I actually became Bar Mitzvah in a synagogue where students did not give a Devar Torah. But I would imagine if I did give a Devar Torah, I would have talked about the fragility of the sukkah. We still are lucky to have the beautiful sukkah up, and how even though you might be fragile, because I think I was a fragile child, I was very sensitive, you can still be present and beautiful and strong. So that's my guess of what I would have said if I would have had a Devar Torah long ago. Rabbi Lorge became Bar Mitzvah reading from the book of Leviticus.
That's true. So my Torah portion when I became Bar Mitzvah was in Vayikra, was in Leviticus. It was Parshiot Emor. I shared it with my twin sister. And the section I read was a recounting of the Jewish calendar. It's one of two places in the Torah where we're told what our calendar is meant to look like. And I spent time focusing on the mitzvot, the commandments around Sukkot. And so I ended up talking about some of the interpretations of the lulav and the etrog and what all four of those species coming together is meant to represent for Jews and for Judaism.
Beautiful.
All right.
What did your sister talk about?
We've seen pictures of Rabbi Lorge as a Bar Mitzvah, and they're pretty great, Rabbi.
Those braces are timeless.
All right.
So I was in the book of Numbers, Parshat Balak, and I belonged to a Reform synagogue, which was a Reform and conservative synagogue that merged in Tacoma because Tacoma could only sustain one Jewish community. And so because of its kind of more conservative / Reform bent, girls became bat mitzvah on Friday night, not on Saturday morning. So I had a Friday night bat mitzvah, and it was in the summer. And my Torah portion is about the prophet Balaam, who is supposed to curse the Israelites, and he is with his donkey, and his donkey just sort of plants himself in the middle of the road, and he starts beating the donkey, saying, "You terrible animal, like, why are you doing this?" And finally the donkey speaks to him and says, "Haven't I been a good servant to you this whole time? I'm keeping you from doing something bad." Of course, when I was 13 years old, the thing I was most obsessed about was whether or not I was going to say in my Devar Torah, "talking ass." But I decided not to. I didn't think anyone would listen after I said that of my 13-year-old friends. So we just called it a talking donkey. Anyway, the part I focused on in particular was the fact that he was supposed to curse the Israelites, but he looks out and sees this beautiful vision. And what comes out is a blessing. Because in truth, when we are taken with a sight of such beauty and truth and goodness, we cannot help but to actually bless. And that is the way we're built as human beings to do that. Even when we feel yucky, like we kind of see these things of beauty, and it changes us in some way. So that was my Torah portion.
All right, which brings us all the way to the end of the Torah, and my bar mitzvah Torah portion was Ki Tavo, September 19th, 1992. And Ki Tavo is a wonderful Torah portion that talks about bringing the first fruits and the tithes, and Moses is addressing the people and rebukes them. But if you asked me today what I talked about for my Devar Torah, I would not be able to tell you because my bar mitzvah was an interesting event, because when you have Turkish parents, there are only a few possible outcomes. You see, number one, they are not going to know culturally what a 13-year-old should do in America. So my mom thought that it would be great for my bar mitzvah party. And Rabbi Mo, you said you were shy, right?
Very shy.
Okay?
Yes.
All right, try this on. For my bar mitzvah party, my mom had a belly dancer, okay? And I am still getting over it to this day. So maybe in a few more decades, I'll be able to tell you what I actually preached about that day.
Wow.
Before we finish, if anyone wants to turn to their neighbor, and if you can actually even remember anything about your bar or bat mitzvah if you had one, mention it. If you never had one, for whatever reason, because we still have people don't, I just want you to know that every few years we do an adult bar and bat mitzvah, and you're welcome to do it with us if you never had one. But maybe just take one moment and tell the person you're next to if you remember anything about yours or why you didn't had one if you didn't have one.
And while you chat, cue the belly dancers.
Please no, please no.
Okay, I've already recruited someone for the adult B'nai Mitzvah class, which is great. I hope that that you'll consider it.
So we are going to provide everyone who's with us in the sanctuary and with us in the sanctuary through technology to have the honor of blessing the Torah. And then, as is customary on Simchat Torah, we will read the last verses of the Torah and the first verses of the Torah, and then say Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, honoring the conclusion of the fifth book of the Torah, and then we'll do the blessing afterwards. And then we'll roll the Torah with the help of our musicians, and we're lucky that the Union for Reform Judaism has put together a terrific Simchat Torah concert, which we're going to air on our webpage and on JBS, and also here in the sanctuary for those that want to stay and watch it on the screen. I'll just remind us that the last letter of the Torah is a lamed, and the first letter of the Torah is a bet. And if you put those two letters together, you get the Hebrew word lev, which means heart. And so may it be that we continue to have the biggest of hearts as we continue to study and learn and be in community together. So I invite everyone to join us in the blessing before the reading of the Torah. Baruch hu et Adonai hamborach.
Baruch Adonai hamorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
ולא קם נביא עוד בישראל כמשה, אשר ידעו אדוני פנים אל פנים, לכל האותות והמופתים, אשר שלחו אדוני לעשות בארץ מצרים, לפרעה ולכל עבדיו ולכל ארצו, ולכל היד החזקה ולכל המורה הגדול אשר עשה משה לעיני כל ישראל.
You want to lead us in Chazak?
חזק חזק ונתחזק.
חזק חזק ונתחזק.
בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום, ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים. ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור, ויהי אור. וירא אלוהים את האור כי טוב, ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך. ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום, ולחושך קרא לילה. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד.
יישר כוח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. Amen. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. And even if we can't dance with the Torahs, we invite you to dance near the Torah with this place as we put it all back together. And a big hand to Howie Lashaw and his amazing band and ensemble. Thank you for making the festive holiday for us. Thank you to all of you. Hag Sameach. If you'd like to stay, we invite you to enjoy the concert from the URJ. If you're watching it at home, it'll also be playing on your screen as well. And we say thank you for coming out and Hag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, happy holiday. We are so delighted that you have decided to join us, our community, our movement, in this wonderful, joyful celebration of Simchat Torah. We are joined by artists sharing some original repertoire, as well as familiar melodies to celebrate and dance with our Torahs, wonderful stories and learning, and of course, hearing the end of our Torah and the beginning of our Torah once again, the celebration of our sacred story and our journey that continues. So have a wonderful celebration and enjoy.
Hey, my friends, my name is Noah Aronson. Shana Tova, and I hope that your holidays are sweet and filled with renewal and a sense of hope and positivity for where this year could potentially lead us. I want to send a offering out for a new way of framing the text of Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah. So the literal translation of this is that Torah emerges from Zion, Mitzion. And I love thinking about how do we maybe think of that word Mitzion and see the relationship with the word Mitsuyan, which means excellence. And so what if from excellence is where Torah emerges from when we are fully stepped into our power, when we're fully communicating from our place of excellence, when we do everything from that place of I want to try my best and do my best and be my best, that is when our Torah can emerge. Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah.
Stumble, I fall. We're not that separate at all.
In your danger, I fear. So far apart and yet so near.
When I'm searching for what's right, you're there to point me toward the light.
You show me the way by what you do and what you say.
Kol Yisrael Arevi Ze Baze. Kol Yisrael Arevi. We are all connected.
I look in your eyes and I see you're my responsibility. And let our hope never cease. We'll live to see the day of peace.
Kol Yisrael Arevi Ze Baze. Kol Yisrael Arevi. We are all connected.
One spirit, one heart, will never be apart.
Kol Yisrael Arevi Ze Baze. Kol Yisrael Arevi. We are all connected. Kol Yisrael Arevi Ze Baze. Israel, Arevi, we are
I'd like to tell you a story about stories. It is said that when the Baal Shem Tov was in need of a miracle, there was a particular ritual he followed. He went to the woods to meditate, and after his meditation, he lit a fire and recited a special prayer. And at the conclusion of this ritual, the miracle he sought came to fruition. Later, when his disciple, the Maggid of Mezrich, was in need of a miracle, he too followed this ritual, except he had forgotten an important detail, such that when he went to the forest, he cried out to the divine, "Master of the universe, I don't know how to light the fire, but I know the special prayer." And that was sufficient. The miracle he sought came to fruition. Later, when Rabbi Moshe Leib of Sassoff was in need of a miracle, he too followed this ritual, except he forgot a few more details, such that when he went to the woods, he cried out to the divine, "Oh, Master of the universe, I don't know the special prayer, and I don't know how to light the fire, but I know the place, and that must be sufficient." And it was. Now, when Rabbi Israel of Rizin was in need of a miracle, he didn't even bother going to the forest. Instead, he sat in his armchair, head in his hands, and cried out to the divine, "Oh, Master of the universe, I don't know the special prayer. I don't know how to light the fire. I don't even know where to go in the woods, but I know the story, and I can tell the story, and that must be sufficient." As vessels of our tradition, we carry our songs, our texts, our liturgies, our stories with us, and we're engaged in the business of telling them in all sorts of ways. And while we may never know the mountains they move or the miracle they provoke, we tell them anyway. May the stories we tell and the ways we tell them this year, next year, and the years to come continue to be sufficient. Shana Tova.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Hi everyone, my name is Eliana Rubin and I am so happy to be joining you during the Simchat Torah. We've reached the end of another year, we've reached the end of another reading. In this final portion, Moses ascends a mountain, looks out into the promised land and passes away before his community, the Israelites, mourn him for 30 days. Now, we are in our second year of COVID. This is our second High Holy Days within the pandemic, and so it's both unfamiliar and familiar. There's newness and there's something that might be a little bit residual from years past. Much like the Israelites took time to process, we should also be taking time to process those that we've lost, whether it's loved ones or experiences. No one plans for things like this. But what we can do is we can take care of ourselves. We can support each other like the Israelites did after Moses' passing. Because once the Israelites entered into the promised land, they did so ready to do so. They were ready to move forward. They weren't necessarily moving on. They were keeping Moses' memory in their hearts, but they knew what they had to do. So as we continue on and as we finish up our reading of our Torah for this year, let's do so with clear hearts, minds, bodies, and souls.
V'lo kam navi od b'Yisrael kemoshe, asher yada'o Adonai panim el panim, lechol ha'otot v'hamaftim, asher shelacho Adonai, la'asot be'eretz Mitzrayim, lefaro ulcho avadav ulcho artso, ulcho hayad hachazaka, ulcho hamora hagadol, asher asa Moshe, le'enei kol Yisrael.
We join together. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz v'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu v'choshech al penei tehom v'ruach Elohim merachefet al penei hamayim vayomer Elohim yehi or Vayehi or, Vayar Elohim et haor ki tov, Vayavdel Elohim bein haor uvein hachoshech, Vayikra Elohim laor yom v'lachoshech kara laila, Vayehi erev vayehi voker Yom Echad.
The story of creation is more than astrophysics. Every day is a moment of renewal. The Torah tells us in the book of Genesis, light spilled out of darkness, waters were gathered together, land appeared and vegetation sprouted, living beings emerged and started to crawl and to swim and to fly and to walk. And God rested and God saw that the world was good. We just read this powerful text from a 270-year-old Torah scroll, which was rescued from the Holocaust. And the scroll, as well as the story, have messages for us of resilience and courage in the face of hardship and uncertainty. And on this Simchat Torah, we remind ourselves that we can be the ancestors that future generations need us to be. We take the lessons of the Torah and the materials of creation, and we can have the strength and fortitude to build a world of promise and potential in partnership with God and one another.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
This is Hanotein Le'Evkoah, a song that reminds us that our strength is built upon the strength of those who came before us. When we look to our ancestors and to our history, we are reminded that we have always been a people of strength. We have come from the weary, come from the small, we've come from the ones who were challenged by it all. We have come from the shadows, bringing in the light. We've come from the ones who never once gave up the fight, and we are here, just as we'll always be, with faith through our fear. We look to the one who made us free. From strength we will find strength. אנחנו מעבדים שהלכו במדבר, 40 שנים הם הלכו אפילו כשהיה אי אפשר. כולנו עם אחד עם אומץ לב ואמונה באדוני, הוא חזק חזק ונתחזק, ועם ישראל חי ברוך אתה. אדוני אלוהינו, from strength we will find strength. Lidor Hador, we praise your name and hold each other up like links in the chain. Through struggle and fear, sorrow and pain, Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitain. Hanotein from strength we will find strength. From strength we will find strength. From strength we will find strength.
Mitzion, Mitzei Torah, Bar Adonai miYerushalayim. Mitzion, Mitzei Torah, Bar Adonai miYerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo, Torah le'amo Yisrael. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael. Bigdushat Toki Mitzion, Mitzei Torah, Bar Adonai miYerushalayim. Mitzion, Mitzei Torah, Bar Adonai miYerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo, Torah le'amo Yisrael. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael. Bigdushat Toki Mitzion, Mitzei Torah, Bar Adonai miYerushalayim. Mitzion, Mitzei Torah, Bar Adonai miYerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo, Torah le'amo Yisrael. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael. Bigdushat
Hey everybody, happy holidays. We're out on the road here with our band and brand new baby Willow, wanting to wish all of you the happiest of New Year's and all the holidays
And we
coming up.
wish you so much love and peace and joy and all good things this year. And we hope you enjoy our song On and On, the Door by Door.
Love you all.
Love you.
There is a past in every portrait. There is a truth in every tale. And all the days that came before us, there is the wind upon our sail.
There is a forest in every father as he stands amidst the wild. There is a mountain in every mother, her sturdy force of heart and mind. The door, Nagi, Lord Lecha. Light in us shines on
Wow, what a meaningful and joyful celebration that was. We are grateful to our artists and clergy and educators, storytellers and teachers who shared their gifts with us as we celebrate Simchat Torah. We can't all be together in person, but the chance to continue to tell our stories and to celebrate is ongoing wherever we are. So we wish you Chag Sameach, happy holiday, and a Shana Tova. May it be a year of sweetness, of hope, and of joy.